No, I don't want Sansa to die, but I think she might. And actually, she already has, twice. Based on George Martin's comments, clues from his original draft, and some other stuff, Sansa Stark could become one of A Song of Ice and Fire's most heart-wrenching deaths, blown over by the cold and deadly winds of winter. Sansa often gets flack for betraying her family and pretending to be someone she's not. But really, that's George Martin's whole point. She has an identity crisis. To be a Stark, or to be a Southern Queen? To be Lady Lannister, or the bastard Alayne Stone? Arya goes through so many conflicting identities, I made this entire video about them. And you can really find this trait to some degree in all of our main characters. Trying to be someone you're not, or being forced to forget your original identity, is something Martin is very interested in. It's how he achieves the human heart in conflict with itself, the only thing worth writing about. At the start of the story, Sansa is an 11-year-old girl who dreams of being a queen and finds herself in a uniquely advantageous position to become one. Even her mom thinks it's a good idea, in the beginning at least. Sansa has her mother's auburn hair, the features of a southern lady, not a daughter of Winterfell. Her hair is actually really important. Not only does it signify her non-Starkness, it also carries the poison that kills a king. And later she dyes it brown to pretend she's someone else. Her sister Arya's hair gets cut short because she must pretend she's a boy. And her mother Catelyn thinks about her hair in the moments before her death. So that's interesting. Let's discuss Sansa's very first death, all the way back in Book 1. On the journey south to King's Landing, Arya's wolf Nymeria wounds Joffrey along the Ruby Ford. At Castle Derry, Arya tells one story, and Joffrey tells another. Sansa is caught between her sister, her family, her loyalty to House Stark, and her prince, her betrothed, the future king. Arya tells the truth. Joffrey began bullying her friend Mycah, so Arya protected him by bonking Joff on the head with a stick, and Nymeria protected her by eating Joff's arm a little. Joffrey lies. Arya and Mycah began beating him with clubs and sicked Nymeria on him. The only other witness was Sansa, who was unwilling to stick her neck out for either Arya or Joffrey. She simply wants to preserve the status quo, preserve her betrothal. She blinked at her sister, then at the young prince. "I don't know," she said tearfully, looking as though she wanted to bolt. "I don't remember. Everything happened so fast. I didn't see." Queen Cersei demands a wolf pelt in recompense for Joffrey's wound. Smartly, Arya had told Nymeria to scram, so the only wolf present is Sansa's, the innocent lady. When George Martin kills Lady, he's also killing a part of Sansa, her innocence. Because in the world of Westeros, while playing the Game of Thrones, Sansa's passivity and unwillingness to take a side is going to get her and innocent people killed.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. There is no middle ground.
Sansa is a reluctant player, but a player nonetheless, and her personality will make it impossible for her to survive. That scene is one of George Martin's best in the entire series because it sums up each character perfectly in only a couple of pages. Joffrey is cruel and he lies. Cersei is petty and puts her son's word first. Arya is brave and beholden to justice. Sansa is scared to ruffle any feathers. King Robert is weary and wants the easy way out. Eddard is in over his head, a head that eventually comes off because, just like Sansa, his innocence had no place in the Game of Thrones. To expect honor and justice from Cersei and Joffrey, well after this debacle at Castle Derry, Ned was never going to survive. He didn't learn his lesson. Will Sansa? Wolfless, Sansa becomes a political hostage in King's Landing. And again, she was part of her own downfall. Who can truly say if Lady would have lived had Sansa sided with Arya on the King's Road? But we can be just about certain that Arya and Sansa herself would have lived had they been able to board the Wind Witch. This is the ship Ned hires to take his daughters back home, as Ned was about to tell King Robert about Cersei's incest as soon as he returned from his hunting trip. However, still believing in her girlish dream of becoming queen, Sansa tells Cersei about Ned's plan. She didn't want to leave King's Landing. Was Sansa solely responsible for her father's demise? Of course not. Ned himself should have believed Arya when she told him about the plot to kill him that she overheard in the dungeon. George Martin points out that Ned shouldn't have refused Renly's offer of 100 swords to seize Cersei and the Red Keep. And Ned was wrong to trust Littlefinger. And of course, Janos Slynt opted to take gold over honor. But now Sansa's innocent, naive dream of marrying Joffrey and becoming queen has led to the death of Lady and aided the death of her father. And she stood in the way of getting herself and Arya to safety via the Wind Witch. This is also a good time to remember that Sansa was only 11, and she didn't know that Joffrey and Cersei would arrest her father. Ultimately, the blame has to be lain with the adults. Blame Cersei for being evil, and blame Ned for being naive. Sansa's punishment for costing herself freedom on a ship home was that her identity as a Stark would be killed. Once she's forced to marry Tyrion, she thinks, "They have made me a Lannister." And we can connect the loss of Sansa Stark into the birth of Sansa Lannister way back to the death of Lady. Sansa laments Lady's death over and over again, and the direwolf continues to haunt her narrative. Sansa dreams of Lady shortly after her death, but trying to remember was like trying to catch the rain with her fingers. Bran believes Lady's death is the reason Sansa sent that letter home, the one that doesn't sound like her. When she meets Dantos Hollard in the Godswood, Sansa wishes Lady was there so she could smell his lies. She calls for Lady's help during her nightmare of the riot. And believing she'll die during the Blackwater, Sansa hopes to see Lady in the afterlife. Later, she dreams of home before fleeing King's Landing with Littlefinger and leaving her Stark identity behind. She ran through the Winterfell Godswood with Lady at her side, and her whole family was alive and well. But when she wakes up, Sansa realizes how terrified and alone she is. Lady and all her family are dead. If Lady were with her, Sansa wouldn't feel so afraid. George himself has said that losing Lady sent Sansa somewhat adrift. The direwolves mirror their respective Stark. Nymeria is on the loose, just like Arya. Ghost is albino, different from the rest of his siblings, just like how Jon the Bastard is different. Greywind leads armies into battle, just like King Robb. Lady is a docile, well-trained pup like Sansa, but she freaking dies even though she's innocent, and so does Sansa's innocence die. A huge chunk of her is gone. And then Sansa kills herself when she goes with Littlefinger. When she was Sansa Lannister, at least she was still partly herself. But now she's Alayne Stone, the bastard daughter of Peter Baelish, gone to live with the Arryns up in the Eyrie. It was almost certainly Martin's intention to kill the Stark part of Sansa by killing her wolf lady. One fan pointed out that Sansa wasn't much of a Stark anymore, and George called that a very astute observation. Another fan didn't believe that Lady's death meant Sansa wasn't really a Stark anymore, and George responded cheekily by saying, "Doesn't it?" When Littlefinger exports Sansa from King's Landing, her life had been filled with death. Lady, her father, probably the rest of her family, Sir Dantos the Fool, King Joffrey, her former beloved. She thinks Tyrion poisoned him, meaning he'll die soon as well. You told me that life was not a song, that I would learn that one day, to my sorrow. Is it all lies, forever and ever? Everyone and everything? She asks Peter. Almost everyone, he says. Save you and I, of course. Baelish is essentially grooming her, both politically and romantically. He does give some solid advice. The best way to baffle your foe is to make moves that seemingly have no purpose, just like killing Joffrey to an outsider had no purpose for Littlefinger. Remember that, Sansa, when you come to play the game. The only game, the Game of Thrones. But he also creepily reminds Sansa of his love for Catelyn, and tries to disarm Sansa into thinking of him as a suitor by telling her that Catelyn gave Peter her virginity. If Peter was good enough for Cat, shouldn't he be good enough for Sansa? Put Joffrey from your mind, sweetling. Dantos, Tyrion, all of them. They will never trouble you again. You are safe now, that's all that matters. You are safe with me, and sailing home. But home isn't Winterfell. It's his home, the Fingers, and then the Eyrie. Now she's someone else, Alayne Stone, Littlefinger's bastard daughter with brown hair instead of red. She builds Winterfell out of snow, but she isn't Sansa Stark anymore. After all, why should she be? Her family is all gone, and her birthright is inhabited by the Boltons. Winter has come now, and who's going to fight Roose Bolton on his turf in the middle of winter on behalf of a 13-year-old girl? Better to be someone else entirely. As Alayne, Sansa pretends to be older and braver, although only by a year. She says she's 14 instead of 13, which to a girl as young as she is, who's already been betrothed and married, feels like she's a woman. And Alayne never lets go of the remnants of Sansa inside her, just like Cat of the Canals or Blind Beth never lets go of Arya. When Littlefinger wants to betroth her to Harry the Heir, Alayne reminds him that Sansa's already married. But he says once Cersei is done, and Tyrion and Sweet Robin are dead, Sansa will be free. The Lords of the Vale will love their young falcon, and when they come together for his wedding, and you come out with your long auburn hair, clad in a maiden's cloak of white and grey, with a direwolf emblazoned on the back, why, every knight in the Vale will pledge his sword to win you back your birthright. So those are your gifts from me, my sweet Sansa. Harry, the Eyrie, and Winterfell. That's worth another kiss now, don't you think? Baelish is trying to buy Sansa's affection. I wouldn't be surprised if George Martin took inspiration here from the classic novel Lolita, in which a man around Littlefinger's age pervs on, kisses, and has sex with a girl around Sansa's age, whose cooperation he buys with new clothes, cross-country road trips, and freedom from home. Humbert is also Lolita's stepfather, like how Littlefinger is posing as Alayne's father, and there's that similar hint of incest since Baelish was obsessed first with Cat and now wants to fulfill those desires with Cat's daughter. And Sansa can't really say no because this man is her protector, and if she leaves, she'll get snatched up by the first predator who finds her, or the first pro-Lannister lord who recognizes her, and she'll be even worse off than if she had just stayed with Littlefinger. It's a lose-lose situation for Sansa, who's not even Sansa anymore. By the way, this is where Game of Thrones completely ruined the story arcs of both Sansa and Peter. As George himself said, the real Littlefinger would never give Sansa up, especially not to the unknown bastard of Roose Bolton. Littlefinger is obsessed with her, and probably sees her as a means of elevating himself even further. Adapting Jane Poole and Harry Harding would have fixed this, but D&D just wanted to give Sansa some more sexual abuse that would turn her into a stronger person because terrible tropes are their specialty.
Without Littlefinger and Ramsay and the rest, I would have stayed a little bird all my life.
So we have Littlefinger's plan. After Robin dies, naturally or otherwise, Harry Harding becomes Lord of the Vale. At this time, Sansa will reveal herself, and because the lords will love Harry so much, and for the love they held for Lady Arryn, Sansa's kin, they will pledge Sansa their swords and win back her home. This scheme sounds wonderful, so it will never happen. Recall that Sansa is still wanted for the murder of King Joffrey, and there is a large bounty for her capture. We know of at least one man who's currently pursuing her, a hedge knight called the Mad Mouse. When he meets Brienne, he mentions Cersei's bounty on Sansa's capture, and later he shows up in the Vale as a new hire of Littlefinger's. In Alayne's Winds of Winter preview chapter, she even dances with the Mad Mouse. Could he be plotting a way to run off with her and deliver her to King's Landing? Yes, but he won't make it very far. The Gates of the Moon, where Alayne is currently trying to court Harry the Heir, is full of knights and Littlefinger's guards. Men like Lothar Brune, who Littlefinger trusts more than anyone, and Oswell Kettleblack, an aged veteran. Both of them know Alayne is really Sansa, and both will keep her secret in order to keep their own heads. But Sansa herself is not good at keeping secrets. In Book 1, she told Cersei about Ned's plans, and in Book 4, she essentially gives away her identity to Miranda Royce. I mean, how would a supposed bastard girl raised in the faith in the Riverlands know the name of Ned Stark's bastard son? Combine that with the widespread news that Sansa Stark has escaped King's Landing after Joffrey's death, and a girl of Sansa's age shows up in the Vale shortly afterward, which is ruled by Sansa's aunt. Miranda doesn't need a PhD to figure that one out. Sansa is 2 years older and more experienced than she was when she left Winterfell in Book 1, but she's still a child, not a political threat, and she'll reveal her secret identity in the Winds of Winter. But even if I think the Mad Mouse will fail to capture her, why do I think Sansa might die? First, there's a few off-page reasons. George Martin has said that he's known the fates of his main characters since he began the books, and their fates haven't changed.
I know the ending in broad strokes. So as I write these last 2 books, I'll be moving toward the endings that I've known since 1991, but many of the fine details may be moved around and changed and things like that.
In 1991, George's original outline tells us which 5 characters are his main characters: Tyrion, Daenerys, Arya, Bran, and Jon. These 5 will make it through to the end of the story. So while this doesn't confirm Sansa will die, it doesn't give her any security either. There's only one way I can see Sansa dying, and it's foreshadowed by the death of Lady. Bad things happen to Sansa as a consequence of other people's actions. Nymeria attacks Joffrey, Sansa gets caught in the middle, and her innocent wolf ends up dying. Ned tries to oust Cersei and her bastards, and Sansa becomes a hostage, the daughter of a traitor. Robb goes to war against the Lannisters, and Sansa gets beaten for it in public. Olenna, probably with Littlefinger's help, kingslays Joffrey, and Sansa gets framed and has Cersei wanting to kill her. And even Littlefinger's perverted obsession with her stems from being unable to marry Catelyn. Based on this trend, Sansa will die as a consequence of a family member's actions. The only ones left who haven't already caused Sansa pain are Rickon, Bran, and Jon Snow. If you have any theories about how one of their actions could lead to Sansa's death, leave them down in the comments. But I don't have a theory for that, because I actually do think Sansa will survive. Simply from a reading and writing standpoint, it would feel odd for George to spend 30 years developing a POV character just for her to ultimately die and go nowhere. He could kill Ned Stark because it was only the first book. George set him up, Ned failed, and George knocked him down. He could kill Robb Stark because the story demanded it. George set him up, Robb made too many mistakes, and George knocked him down. But the thing with Sansa Stark is that she's only been getting knocked down since the story began. Her direwolf dies, she becomes a hostage, she gets beaten up by grown men, she almost dies in a riot, she gets framed for regicide, she gets whisked away by a pervert who is in love with her mother and now wants to use her to fulfill his childhood fantasies while also achieving some nebulous political power, which is perhaps Winterfell, her home to begin with, that she hasn't seen since the story began. It just wouldn't be fair or satisfying to kill Sansa when she hasn't really changed as a character. She's learning, sure, but she just, probably, revealed her secret identity to Miranda Royce. And she isn't an intellectual match for anyone yet, especially not Littlefinger. She needs more time. We need more time with her. Sansa also might survive from a prophecy standpoint. Jojen Reed had a green dream about a wolf with wings who was bound to the earth with stone chains. This is magic, and may only be half reliable. Mira says that Jojen dreams things that haven't happened, but sometimes they do. Jojen insists they come true every time. He says his green dreams never lie, so they go to the Night Fort because Jojen dreamed of it containing a gate through the wall, and this came true via the Black Gate. His dream about an incoming storm at Queen's Crown came true, and his dream about the sea coming to drown Winterfell was true as well. The sea was just metaphorical. The Ironborn came from the sea to take the castle. So we know this dream about the chained, winged wolf will come true, but it will be metaphorical, and Jojen's reading will be wrong. Bran isn't the winged wolf, it's Sansa. And the crow inside this dream, the one trying to free the wolf from its chains, that is Bran. There is actually a lot of wings foreshadowing in Sansa's story. The Hound calls her Little Bird, and Sansa's the only person in the whole series who gets called that, besides the general term for Varys' spies. The little bird thinks she has wings, does she? Or do you mean to end up crippled like that brother of yours? And there's this folktale about Sansa. The Northern Girl, Winterfell's daughter. We heard she killed the king with a spell, and afterward changed into a wolf with big leather wings like a bat, and flew out a tower window. Well, Sansa is a warg. George said that all the Stark kids possess the magic of warging, to one degree or another. Sansa has no direwolf to warg, but perhaps she can skin change other animals, like how Arya can skin change a cat, and how Bran can skin change Hodor. Sansa uses birds, perhaps without even realizing what she's doing. We have this passage from the Eyrie where Sansa is able to close her eyes and see Marillion in his sky cell. Maybe she's just being imaginative, but you can understand why I might interpret this as Sansa skin changing a bird. Hopefully she's able to harness this power without Littlefinger or anyone finding out, and she can use a bird's eye view to get some sort of intel that will help her politically. This way, we can get both political and magical character growth with Sansa. She could spy on the Mad Mouse conspiring to capture her. Or perhaps Lyn Corbray will be up to something, like killing his older brother. Maybe she'll spy on the Lord's Declarant, like Bronze Jon Royce, discussing what is to be done with Littlefinger. I don't know, I don't really want to write fanfic here, but I think Sansa will skin change birds in the Winds of Winter. Going back to Jojen's Green Dream, isn't it weird the winged wolf is wearing stone chains? Most chains are iron. In fact, this is the only mention of stone chains in the entire series, so George uses the word stone for a specific reason. I can't think what stone has to do with Bran, but I do know that Stone is currently Sansa's surname, Alayne Stone. That secret identity is Sansa's metaphorical chains, keeping her tethered to a life that isn't hers. She must be freed and become Sansa Stark again. And I think that's what Bran is trying to do. He's trying to access Sansa in this Green Dream and make her become a Stark again, to remove her stone chains. In one of Jon's dreams, Bran appears in the form of a weirwood tree. He's trying to get Jon to open his eyes, and then Jon gets attacked by an eagle. This is Orell's eagle, the one that later attacks him in real life. After this dream, folks realize that Jon is a warg. That's the eye Bran was trying to open. Now he'll have to do it for Sansa. A couple years ago, some dedicated Ice and Fire sleuths found this draft of A Feast for Crows. Despite George's awful handwriting, we can read this Sansa section pretty well. Resolve to be Sansa Stark and take north. Alayne will slip back into her true identity in the Winds of Winter, just like Arya will, probably. This draft is pretty wild. There's something about Sweet Robin getting married, perhaps to Sansa, news from White Harbor, potentially Jon's death or the Boltons being defeated, killing the Mad Mouse. Whatever happens with Sansa, she'll need to be careful. We read this skin-changing warning in the Book 5 prologue. Birds were the worst, to hear him tell it. Men were not meant to leave the earth. Spend too much time in the clouds, and you never want to come back down again. I know skin changers who have tried hawks, owls, ravens. Even in their own skins, they sit moony, staring up at the bloody blue. Will Sansa get herself lost in the clouds, and never want to come back down again? Let me know down in the comments where you see Sansa's story going in the Winds of Winter. Will she go home and help Jon and Bran and whoever reclaim Winterfell? Will she become a regent for her brother Rickon? Or will she go south and try to marry Aegon Targaryen and make herself a real political threat in the Game of Thrones? Thanks for watching and subscribing.